Hi, I'm Dr. Sakina Al-Haddad. You may have heard of the concept of learning styles. Today, we're going to bust the myth of learning styles. Learning styles is the idea that some individuals are more visual versus auditory versus kinesthetic as learners. Turns out, this is as good as fiction. While people certainly have a preference as to the way in which they want to learn, this is indeed true. There is, however, no evidence suggesting that aligning teaching or learning with a preferred learning style will improve learning. In fact, there is now a pretty large body of literature that illustrates we really shouldn't be wasting much time in trying to personalize learning based on preferred learning styles. This is a tricky myth to tackle because it is so popular in the media and in many educational circles. So much so that in 2017, a whole bunch of researchers from neuroscience, education, and various areas in psychology wrote an open letter debunking this myth. It makes sense as to why the idea of learning styles is so popular. It aligns with the idea that individuals are different from one another, and it allows us to acknowledge and consider these preferences. The research evidence, however, just does not stack up. The problem does not stem from the fact that we have individual differences in how we might prefer to learn, but rather the issue is in catering to these preferences when teaching or learning. Catering to learning styles when teaching or learning does not help learners learn, and can even hurt their mindset about what they can achieve. This means that this myth may do more harm than good, as those who believe they have a certain learning style may pigeonhole themselves into thinking they cannot learn using other methods. This belief may also be detrimental in that where people believe this is an innate thing, that they can't do anything about it, which really stymies their developmental and growth potential. This finding was recently published in the Journal of Educational Psychology. If you believed in this myth too, don't sweat it. There's been so much research in the last decade looking at people's beliefs in the learning styles myth, and that across all of these research, about 74 to 95% of people, including the general public, students and educators, even if they have had training in neuroscience, psychology or education, also believed in this myth. So what is effective? To be most effective, do use a mix of different modes for learning. Learning with new and even unfamiliar ways, or combining them with familiar ways, can aid in consolidation by recruiting multiple brain regions and employing a variety of neural pathways. Importantly, the modalities for learning does depend on the learning task. That is, the learning modalities depends on what is being learned, rather than the person's preferences. And this is why being open to and exploring all different ways to learn is a good thing. Intuitively, you probably already know that the mode of learning does depend on what it is that you're trying to learn. So, for example, learners would benefit from learning about human anatomy through use of visual diagrams or even videos, even if they preferred only reading or listening about it. And similarly, when learning or teaching about engineering construction, using a combination of visual, auditory, or kinesthetic modes have benefits for learning, regardless of whether learners think that they learn best in each of these modes in isolation. Hence, a more evidence-based approach is to embrace the idea that the combinations of all various modalities is important for learning. You certainly wouldn't want your surgeon to have learned by just reading because it was the learning preference, would you? So let's do the evidence-informed approach by learning with whichever modes that works best for learning whatever it is that you are learning, and explore these ways so that we can use and develop all of our brain. That is Learning Styles Myth Busted. Watch this video by Dr. Jared Cooney-Hovarth on what the neuroscience evidence is behind this. And watch this video by Dr. Megan Sumeraki on dual coding, an evidence-based way of combining words with visuals to support learning.